Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode of Top 5. This is the show where I give my top 5 list for some topic in progressive rock, usually something that my wife generates, and I just come up with a list off the top of my head and use it as a springboard for you guys to give your list or your commentary about the subject in the comments section. So don't expect a lot of heavy research and a lot of really dialed in lists here. This is just more for fun and just to give a short fun video for the week that I think you guys could enjoy. And as always, if you guys want to, I would love you guys to subscribe. It would really help the channel and show that there's some interest in these topics that I'm discussing here. Comment and a like, of course, is also well appreciated. So any support is really helpful for the channel and helps me grow, and I'm really appreciative. I'm slowly making my way to 3,000 subscribers, and it's really fun and really cool to see this support and people latching on to certain videos and certain topics. So really grateful for you guys, and let's get into the topic today. This is a really fun topic, I thought. This is albums that inspired prog, or some people call this Proto-Prog as a genre, basically the origins of prog. Proto-Prog is a combination of the word proto, which comes from the Greek the earliest, and prog, which is short for, of course, progressive rock. So this is the earliest forms of progressive rock before it really completely developed. A lot of psychedelic influences from the 60s tends to apply to this definition, and mostly it's albums that came out before the big full-blown progressive rock. And basically there's a lot of debate about what moment progressive rock really formed. Is there a specific date or specific instance that you can really point to? And of course, like anything else, it's a slowly developing thing that you really can't pinpoint specifically. A lot of people have different definitions and different ideas, but I think the easiest way to really define this is the start of King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King, which came out October 10th, 1969. To me, that was the first real true prog album. I'm sure it can be debated, but I think a lot of people agree that that was one of the seminal first big statements for progressive rock. So I tried to pick albums that came out before that date as examples of Proto-Prog, albums that I think really inspired the genre. And I just ordered it in pretty much in order of preference for these albums, not really in order of their impact, but you could argue that perhaps also. But I basically just wanted to give a list of 5 albums that I think were very influential to progressive rock and really sparked the genre that I love here. So a couple honorable mentions before I get into the proper list. The Mothers of Invention, Freak Out, which came out June 27th, 1966. Of course, Frank Zappa's early statement with a lot of cool psych elements. Zappa really had his own approach and had a lot of interesting elements that really spoke to this experimentation and doing things against the grain early on. So that was influential. I thought of The Who's Tommy, which was one of the early examples of a really expanded concept album with a storyline and some interesting different elements that they're doing musically. That came out May 1969. I thought of The Nice and the album The Thoughts of Emerle Stavjak. This is from 1967, of course, featuring Keith Emerson in the group. So you got some examples of early Keith Emerson doing his thing on keyboards, and you got some really cool psychedelic sounds and things that are really showcasing some seminal artists who would come to be major prog artists in the future. So those were ones I thought of originally. But starting into the list proper, at number 5, I have Procol Harum and their debut album, self-titled album from September 1967. Of course, this comes off their big popular songs, A Whiter Shade of Pale. This one was a big hit and a big success. It actually wasn't on the UK version of this album, but looks like it was released in the US version, which actually did a little bit better, had some success in the charts. But Procol Harum is a really influential group who really introduced a lot of cool psychedelic instruments, some classical ideas, and fused them in a blues rock sort of environment, which was really foundational to a lot of progressive rock that was to come. There's just a lot of cool influences in this stew that really were bringing to light some interesting innovations into the genre and into music itself. So I believe that was a really influential one. At number 4, I have Pink Floyd's debut album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, from August 1967, named after a chapter in Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows. It's a swirling blend of psychedelia and space rock. Syd Barrett, of course, is the main man behind this project. Some whimsical shorter tracks, but also some more epic length things that like Astronomy Domine and Interstellar Overdrive. It's a colorful mix of sounds and a lot of different variation that showcased a band that was doing really interesting things with psychedelia and 60s rock at the time. Really cool collection of songs, and a great starting off point for a group that would become one of the seminal prog bands as it developed also. So, and you still get the core members here, Roger Waters, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright, joined by Syd Barrett. And you get a really magical, interesting combination of things that I think really showcased a signpost to what was to come in the genre, but also for Pink Floyd themselves and what they'd further develop into with more space rock type sounds and psychedelic influences. Number 3, I've got the Moody Blues, Days of Future Past, which came out in November 1967. Some people consider this one of the very first concept albums. Of course, the Moody Blues is an English prog rock band who went forward to do a lot of really notable releases. This one in particular features Nights in White Satin, which was a huge hit for them. And it's really cool because it blends these orchestrated sounds. You know, it almost feels like a classical album with this big, lush symphonies, but you also get some of that rock element from the Moody Blues combined with it to really create a very interesting combination of flavors that would later be utilized by a lot of prog bands, of course, in blending some of those classical influences with rock instrumentation. But this is almost like soundtrack music and really explores that symphonic style sound. It sounds like it even was designed that way, that the Moody Blues were suffering financial difficulties and the label basically was planning to release a classical album to showcase the stereo recording techniques of their new imprint, Daram. But instead brought the group the Moody Blues in to bring a more pop element with progressive orchestrations conducted and arranged by Peter Knight to create a really cool suite of songs that really sounds really lush and beautiful, takes these classical elements, but also inserts a little bit of a rock flavor to them through that rock instrumentation, and just creates a beautiful sounding album that really explores an interesting concept. So that's really a notable release that I really appreciate. Next at number 2, I have the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds from May 1966. I believe the earliest album on this list. But a lot of people cite the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds as one of the most influential rock albums. The Beach Boys, it's interesting because their earlier material, they were known more for their like 60s surf rock type stuff, just fun music you'd listen to on the beach with cool harmonies. But this was really where they honed their craft and created something that was a lot more artistically driven, really incorporating different sonic wizardry in the studio. Brian Wilson, of course, is a notable figurehead for really innovating the genre, for really creating sounds that were new and exciting at the time, but still keeping their pop-centric melodies and their harmonies and all of the beautiful sounds that they're known for. So it was a really innovative record. It feels like they were being pressed by the Beatles. There was a little bit of a race between them and the Beatles in innovating in the studio. You know, Revolver came out before this, and I believe this was a little bit of a response to Revolver in a way. Brian Wilson was trying to make a really innovative, perfect album with this, and really spent a lot of time in the studio developing these techniques, and you get a lot of blend of different styles and sounds. Really cool, innovative things going on, and more creative than your typical rock album at the time. So I think it really leaned into that spirit that would come about in progressive rock, of trying to innovate, trying to meld different genres together, trying to add new sounds and new developments into the familiar musical palette that I think was really interesting. And my number 1, just because I'm a big fan, is the Beatles. I picked Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. from June 1967, which, could very well be a response to Pet Sounds and the innovation that was brought about there from the Beach Boys. Now the Beatles are going into the studio and trying to innovate and create something really special. And it's also another example of a near concept album, this fictional group, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And this album's basically an exploration of that fictional band and their sound and that kind of thing. You get some really expressive sounds from different genres. You get a lot of different things going on. Really innovative stuff in the studio once again. You get some influences from vaudeville, circus, music hall, avant-garde music, Western and Indian classical music, that British psychedelia. All of those sounds are really baked into this record in a very interesting, innovative way that I think really inspired a lot of the prog musicians that would come out of this era. That, there's some really cool experimentation you can do in the studio that still sounds really, really good, but really explores more creativity and brings about more interest and shows that we can push boundaries and not just stick to a very conventional format. And so I think this album really sparked that for a lot of people and showcased that you could really create an album that's conceptual, that's you put a lot of artistic integrity and work into. It's not just all about going out and playing live and playing in clubs and just playing simple rock songs and pop music. You can really take your time and develop something really interesting and creatively satisfying, even in the format of rock and roll music. So I think they really brought a shift into that mindset of creativity and sparking more ideas and trying to do something against the grain that explores more of the boundaries of what you can do within this format of music. So some really interesting albums here. I hope you guys enjoyed my list. I'm definitely not the prime expert on this music and this kind of stuff. I feel a little bit out of my league. I know a lot of you in the comments will probably have a lot more to share and will pinpoint albums that I missed that were really influential also. But, this is from my own knowledge and what I know about the genre and its beginnings. So hopefully you enjoyed this little rundown and these choice of albums. And I had a lot of fun talking about this. So thank you guys for joining me. And I'll hopefully catch you guys in a future Top 5 episode. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Enjoy the music.